trying to degrade live?
No, I think that for all it's worth, like, Arum is a very old school person. That's not his first comment that has been offline. There was another one where he said something about a reporter. There was another one when I was arguing with him that he called me. This is a constant trend, and
Skywalker Dub Right,
one of those things that they say it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right? He has been all the way from the respect of putting together, the Thriller in Manila, right? And having to go through those times, he's not the only one. There are other old style writers in the game right now that will constantly degrade me, and then when you listen to their other words, when they start talking about Clarissa's shields or things like that, you hear that there's a constant tone when it talks about women. Now, do I think, so you look at someone like Bob Arum, that's been in the game for so long, you look at someone like Eddie Hearn that is young, and he understands the direction of where females can be in the sport and how to do that. I think Arum's team and Arum himself don't know how to capitalize on it, and they really don't have the patience to even want to try to compete on that level, because they're just like, well, who cares? Like, it'll go away eventually. But it's not. The female empowerment movement has moved significantly in the past decade, and you've seen women that are commentators now, women having their own boxing channels and really do speak their minds, managers, and things like that. So I mean, if you don't want to move with the time, it will move without you. And I think we saw that when he doubted the Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano numbers, and they were amazing. The show, I was there. That arena was on fire.
You went to that fight? You was at that fight, weren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Man, it looked like it was amazing in there. It looked like it.
Hey, Rachel,
Yeah.
we got two ladies that get on, and they know, they have a lot of
Check out my
boxing
man,
knowledge, just like
Skywalker.
you. Their names are Quee and Ashley's Corner. They're part of a little network, and they do really good boxing content. I think you like them a lot. But they know their
I
stuff.
love that.
Yeah, on the right side, these girls know their stuff, huh?
Yeah, because the only ones that I have talked to that are female within the boxing YouTube community is the best. What was it? The best female boxing show. That's one. I actually guessed it on that one. The second one was Tro Boxing supports Queens of Boxing.
Okay.
And so those are the only two that I've ever, actually interacted with.
Yeah, they do a collaboration. One's name's Quee, and the other one's Ashley, so they call it Q&A boxing. And they're always dropping content. They love the sport. They're hooked. They're on YouTube every day.
5 gonna pull up.
Okay. Yeah, if you could put it in the private chat, like they're or put it on the.
Hey, can you guys, hey, K-Rock, could you give me the link for Quee?
Rachel, I hope you subscribe to me and tell somebody. I gotta ask you that next time.
That was very interesting to me. So we see how Eddie Hearn, he brought Clarissa Shields over, Baumgartner, I believe Michaela Mayer. She's with him as well, you know what I'm saying?
No, she's the top rank.
Okay, Michaela Mayer's with top rank?
Yeah, unless she moved in the last month. I don't think she did.
I gotta see. We gotta see what happens on that one. But also Katie Taylor, you know what I mean? Eddie Hearn, he's shown a lot of love to the female fighters. Also, Jake Paul, and people, y'all can crucify me for this one, but Jake Paul, he's making a big statement as far as the love he's showing Amanda Serrano, you know what I'm saying, and getting her paid the way she deserves to be paid, and promoting her the correct way. What do you think where do you see the sport of women's boxing going, and do you think there can be a foothold, because in the U.S., especially with like Clarissa Shields, for her to make her big fight, she's going over to the UK. You know what I mean? The majority of the time. do you think there is a space and a foothold in the United States for female boxing, especially with what we've seen in Madison Square Garden from Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano?
Yeah, I totally believe that there is. I mean, you know what sucks about most of this is that UFC did it before us. You know, we shoved our women and put them in closets, and we didn't showcase their talent. And UFC put it ahead of us and paid, you know, I know the numbers aren't like what boxing is, but at the same time, they were starting to get paid more closely with the men, right, in UFC. They were showcasing them on main events, and we weren't, right? So, and they just kept saying, oh, women have no place, women have no place. And it to have a newcomer like UFC do something before something like as far as our sport's concerned, boxing, was kind of laughable that they would even try to gamble it, and we wouldn't even blink at it. As far as Jake Paul is concerned, you know, I don't. Of course, you know, when we're talking about real boxing, I'm not super pleased with what he is in boxing, but at the same time, like when he had fought and then he evened out of his own purse the money for the boxers on his undercard, like to me that's damn respectful, because we have fighters that, you know, I think we talked about this before about Canelo making 40 million and Bivol only making 2. Now, could you have given a little bit more to that side? Because 38 million versus 40 million is not going to change your life. It's already changing your life. 38 million or 40 million. Give Bivol the amount that he should have had. Because I feel like that it was just, you know, like there comes a point where it's just greed. And that's the problem with boxing, is that boxing is such an individualized sport. All we think about is me first. How do we bring these boxers together when all they think about is their own ego, and they can't give back to their sport? They don't want to. It's not in their best interest to, is what they all believe.
You just dropped the gems right there.
Like I said, it's just really different because Nonito is one of those people that believes in fairness. He believes that there's a lot of corruption in the sport. He believes in protecting the fighters, but he's far from a lot of the other guys in the sport that would, you know, just take all the money and run. And so that's why I said, like, as much as I don't like who Jake Paul fights, and, you know, the fact that he is bringing eyeballs to the sport. I wish he would get more boxers and put them on his channel. But like I said, him sharing his quote unquote wealth is commendable to me.
And you know, it's crazy, and I'm gonna let y'all go after this. I apologize. It's crazy though, because people, and I agree about Jake Paul as a boxer. Although he is getting ready to fight Stephen Rottman Jr., so I think it's his first real boxing match that he'll be in, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs there. But I will say, like you said, bringing eyes back to the sport. We need as many eyes watching boxing right now as we can get, regardless of how we get them there. Unfortunately, regardless of how we get them there, we need as many eyes watching the sport to grow the sport again and to make it what it used to be. I look at Clarissa Shields, and he extended the offer to have her on one of his undercards. Now, I understand where she was coming from, saying that she's a boxer, and in my opinion, possibly the greatest female boxer of all time. You know what I'm saying? So I understood the point that she was coming from. But I also will say that the way you just explained it with Jimmy Paul, the way he gives money back, or willing to take less to make sure that the people on his undercard, they can show him love. We need to see that from all fighters, because at the end of the day, boxing, people don't understand it, but it's a fraternity. We always say that it's individualized. The problem is damn near anybody you talk to, I'm not going to say anybody, you talk to way more people than I ever talk to stuff. But I can guarantee we talk to very similar people, and I know that when I look at the chats and things like that online, boxing is a very small community. And so at some point in time, we got to all come together in this sport to make sure that the sport progresses forward. I said all that to ask you, what do you think about, or how do you see, or what's the best way to progress the sport, and what should, as YouTube channels and those type of things, what should we be doing to try to progress the sport?
I think for YouTube channels, I honestly think, more of the guys that are boxing need to to show their personality. Like I keep talking. I think one of the things that Jake Paul really highlighted is something a long time ago that we had talked to Top Rank. Me and Nonito actually had one of the first boxing YouTube channels a really long time ago. And we were showing, what we were doing behind the scenes and all this other stuff. Top Rank didn't want to invest at that point into their own marketing. And they're like, we have 24/7. I was like, boring. I was like, okay, how many times are we going to see someone run up the stupid hill? How many times are we going to see someone punch a bag? That's not going to generate views because nobody cares about that. That's outside an actual boxing fan. If you want to increase the viewership, you have to reach something that's different. You have to reach something like, who is Nonito Donaire outside of boxing? Right. Who is he? And don't sugarcoat it. Like, is he a family man? How many kids does he have? How is his life like? What is he like outside of boxing? Have him, really connect on a different level. Because that's the thing, is that boxing fans are the only ones that watch 24/7. Most of the time, first of all, the voiceover on boxing 24/7 sounded like a historian, and I was watching something on the Discovery Channel more than I was watching something that I wanted to be drawn into. It was never drawn into. It was catered to only boxing fans. And if you never want to reach more people, then stick to the same thing that you've been doing for the last 40 years while everyone else is changing. I think Jake Paul had shown that if you change the algorithm on how you're presenting these fighters and investing the time in building on who they are, I think that's how we can actually grab more fans.
Hey, ma'am, thank you very much for saying that, because I was saying the same thing. Is if you have ESPN and Disney backing you, why not incorporate, some shows and content with these guys and their families and their training? And like you said, for the people to really let them be able to be a story for them, you know what I mean? So they can be invested in the people as well as the fighters. But do you think, now I really wanted to ask you though, do you see you guys getting into promotion?
Cool, didn't see that coming.
People have asked me that, and I'm not super keen on getting into promotions. I think right now where I like to be is just advising. I've advised a lot of fighters. I was actually on another channel. What really broke me out was someone asked me about, they asked Nonito about contracts. And then I said, Nonito was like, don't ask me about contracts, ask Rachel. So he set up a meeting with me, and he gave me a couple days. So I got all the contracts that I've ever received, and I edited them out so it doesn't show who the fighter is and who the promoters are or the managers. And we went one by one, line by line. I think at this point I have more experience in advising and managing than being a promotional outfit. And I mean, we work really well with Richard Schaefer. And, so the last thing I want to do also is compete against him.
I wasn't trying to say nothing like that now, but I'm talking about like in the future though, maybe.
She's the female. D Ray. She's the female Al Heyman, bro. She's the female. Am I wrong about Rachel? You the female Al Heyman. I'm just saying, respectfully.
Yeah, except Heyman I feel like Heyman. You've ever watched like Bruce Lee's old movie, like The Big Boss, where you don't see him. It's kind of like how Heyman is, and you see me almost everywhere. So,
right.
the only
we probably just seen Heyman in the streets at the mall. Nobody had a clue.
Here, though. Thank you very much again. Appreciate you.
Of course.
I'm gonna go.
Right side. You ain't going nowhere.
Oh, my bad. I'm on mute. Go ahead, D Ray. Go ahead. My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just asking her, you know, with the promotion because, and other thing, like, you know, for like fighters though, you know, I was kind of asking people about like an association, you know, something. Back in the old days, they would have called it a boxers union or something like that. But an association where the fighters can kind of help themselves, so you know, they don't be so much at the mercy of the suits and have to take, you know, bad contracts or bad fights or going to fights injured, and also, you know, have something so when the fighting is over and they're out the ring, you know, they're still kind of rewarded for the sacrifices that they made in the art. But go ahead, man.
I think something like that would have to be adopted on the professional level, and then spread out through and adopted throughout the states and ABC. It would have to have, I believe, a nonprofit standing, and then have the funds that can be donated in to be able to pull in lawyers that, or even lawyers that are working pro bono and want pro bono hours as well to look over these things. Right? Now, the thing that would be interesting is setting up the checks and balances to make sure that the lawyer that is working on behalf of fighter A isn't getting paid on the back end from promoter A, right? Boxing's such a cloak and dagger sport that it almost the only way that you would be able to do something like that is to edit out the fighter and the promoter and send the contract that way. So then everybody's you know, their identities are secret and they're only working on their ethical merit. And not to their own personal gain.
Hey man, all right, Rachel. So you just, I apologize. You just segmented into one of the questions. Daniel Kinahan. Have you had dealings with him? And what's your whole opinion? If you can speak, I don't know if you can speak on this, but what's your opinion? Go ahead.
There was an LA journalist that called me when Kinahan's thing went, you know, viral, and he was like, you know, blah 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 about Kinahan, and remember it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was just having my coffee, and I'm like, I'm sorry, who? And they're like, Kinahan. I was like, who is? Okay, so what does it have to do with Nonito? Because they were talking about, oh, is this going to do something with the fight with the Inoue?
Yeah.
And he's like, Probellum, Kinahan, and I'm like,
MTK Global.
I was like, I've only talked to Richard. I've never even heard of who Daniel Kinahan is. So he tried to give me background, and I'm like, okay. I was like, it still has nothing to do with us. And he's like, so you never met him? I was like, no, unless I saw him at a ringside and he asked for a picture, but I've never done dealings with him or anything like that. So in the long run, I started, you know, researching on him and who he was associated with and this and that stuff. And people asked me my opinion on it, and I just said, I was like, you know what? I was like, what I think is a little bit laughable is the fact that the governments are asking for the public's help in trying to prosecute someone. So you're telling me basically, in not so many words, that you don't have a case. That's what you're telling me? It's not my job. You're not paying me. And I'm not going to get myself in a situation, if he's as scary as everyone's saying he is on the news reports, to get shot.
Yeah.
So why would I go do your job? That's what the taxpayers are paying for. go and do your job. Don't ask me to get involved and put anything else on the line. So, you know, as far as that's concerned, I saw that Top Rank had their dealings with Kinahan, and I saw the ugliness of the washing of the hands and pointing at other promoters that had happened, and I don't necessarily agree with that either. I think if you dealt with him on your best decision that maybe he turned a leaf, then you still have to own what you did. You still have to say, yes, I did deal with him and blah, 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 but with the sanctions, we decided to cut our ties. So don't deny anything. Don't pretend. Like, it just makes you look even more guilty.
I have a question about sort of the long-term health. I have professional insurance where if I was unable to perform the task, you know, a bunch of tasks, I'd get like a monthly stipend, right? Like, you know, kind of an insurance policy. Yeah. My ability to perform my duties, right? Are boxers able to be insured in such a manner, or is their job too like hazardous?
Their job's too hazardous. I know even when it came to life insurance, they wouldn't insure them the same way.
Congress got to get involved.
So, yeah, they don't have that. And that's why I'm saying, like, it would have to be like almost like a congressional thing where it came down and they were like, okay, listen, like, if this happens, this happens, this happens, and it's documented proof. Like, for example, like, you got injured during training for a fight, and fight got canceled, and you just need something to get you by until you get better, until that fight is rescheduled or something like that. The numbers would have to reflect, and in addition to, you know, here comes the problem of, well, do you pay monthly into that? And when we see boxers that, you know, barely make anything, at the end of the day, they might get $5,000 for a fight. Then they have to pay their manager and their trainer and whatever. If they had advances off of their purse, they're stuck with barely anything, and then you're going to take off an insurance in addition to, right? It'd be difficult to decipher how that insurance would be funded and pay out as far as that's concerned. Because, I mean, insurance policies are always like just in case. And no one ever thinks that they're going to need it. And most of the younger boxers are going to say, I never need it, right? And then when they do, they're going to try to get covered. So how do you make sure that there's no false claims? How much is too much as far as an insurance coverage policy for something like that? When considering some of these boxers are making $5,000, the other ones are making $40 million. What's enough? Like, if Canelo was paying, let's pretend Canelo was paying an insurance policy at even $500 a month in case he got injured in camp, and his purse is $40 million. How much do you give Canelo for him to be comfortable until he reschedules the fight? Or do you up his premium? That's like such a mathematical equation because of the fact of, you know, the difference in paycheck. And even if he was injured, who's to say that he can come back, right? So if he says, like Loma, I had a shoulder surgery, just because he has a shoulder surgery doesn't mean he's going to perform the optimal way. Who's to say he doesn't need more time? When does that stop?
I wish you had more time.
It seems like those are definitely questions that would need answering. But the funding, one of the possible sources of funding could be from the sanctioning bodies, right? They conduct sanctioning fees. They, you know, around the world, right? While they're building schools in the rainforest, they could, you know, maybe get some kind of health insurance for the people who are paying.
I mean, you could, but at the same time, we're talking about
greedy ass.
We're talking about Estrada that can't have two sanctioning bodies play nicely at the table right now. So one will be like, okay, well, we're willing to put in this much. The other one's like, no, forget that. We have, I don't know, we have too many champions or whatever. And the other one's like, I don't even want to play. how do you force the sanctioning bodies to do so unless there's an actual
So if Showtime can't sell the fight,
law in
why
place
can't we just go to a
some
purse bid
stipulation
and let another
within
network buy the fight?
within
Maybe
congressional
ESPN
or
would buy
within the
fight.
states that mandate it? That's the thing, is that if they want to fight in a certain state, you have to meet certain requirements, right? You have to have licensing, you have to have medical passed, you have to have this, and that. So unless it's kind of a non-negotiable for them to quote unquote operate within the state and have their belts put in the state, then they would have to pay an insurance stipend for the fighters. It's you're asking for someone to put their best foot forward, and I think in boxing, honestly, there's not very many of them that would.
Yep. Yeah, I get it.
So you gonna run for Congress or Senate?
Neither.
Kenny here chasing you down for pictures. I'm like, what?
No. I have way too much stuff on my hands to do that. I mean, I know they even asked Nonito before. They're like, oh, is Nonito going to run for Congress or Senate? And I'm like sitting in the back, like shaking my head. And Nonito's like, she said no. I go, I said no, not because I didn't think you are not a good representative. I said no because I'm going to be stuck with the damn paperwork.
Yeah. I mean, not like that, but you know, that's great that you support him that much, though. But go ahead, Skywalker.
No, I'm good. Ronnie Baldonado says shout out, man.
Hi.
See, you are so cool. And you know, if like, you know, when they asked Floyd Mayweather questions, just for an example, if he answered them like you do, I think boxing would be in a better and further along place, you know, with the safety of the fighters and the fans, you know, taken care of. So that's cool.
I think a lot of the people who are, I would just say, you know, the ones that have been around for some time, have to take a liking into the social media aspect. As much as Bob Arum doesn't like social media, and also doesn't want to move into, you know, the women's era. It does take a little bit for these boxers who have never had to do these types of things to switch their mindset to understand the reason why Jake Paul is doing so quote unquote well in the sport is because of his social media presence, his overuse of social media. He is everywhere and has saturated the market with his name. And most of the people who are watching his boxing, have never watched boxing in their entire life, have no clue what they're watching, and really don't frankly care. They're just a fan of his. So when you get these boxers that, you know, they all of a sudden have to just be themselves, it's not normal, because most of the time they're in front of press that they're told they're not supposed to say certain things, or they're at a weigh-in and you're asking them stuff that they don't really care what you have to ask at this point. They just want to eat and drink.
I don't care.
They just want to eat and drink.
And I honestly don't think we give boxers enough credit. Like, one of the things that always cringed me is when the interviewer at the end of the match, they go to the victor and they ask them, so are you going to fight this guy next? Are you going to, what's next on the line? How about this guy? This guy's calling you out, talking crap. How about give the fighter the credit that he just won and let him savor his victory instead of pushing it under the rug?
Chopping jam.
Say that.
And you know, it's so interesting. What do all fighters say? Hey, man, I'm just happy I got this victory tonight. I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk to my team. I'm going to work on my team. You know what I'm saying? And we'll see what's next. It's just, although EJ did say, but, I mean, Terrence, I'm coming after your motherfucking belt. I mean, that's what EJ said. I didn't say it. EJ said it, but outside of something like that, you know, if that fight happens, that's a guarantee. I agree with you, right? And give these fighters the time to reflect.
Pound for pound,
you know what I'm saying,
50-50 or duck rabbit season.
Man, the what is it, the WBA, I believe. Right
So
after
he's
Charlo
standing alone
won,
out there.
this nigga they ordering the mandatory. The man can't even get the belts yet for undisputed. If he got a mandatory with Tennessee.
He wanna
Hey man,
have
that's
him
what
posing with his
undisputed is
belts.
about, bro. You got challengers, man. You
Hey, hey man, invite Gabe. Hold on, Gabe. This is a good brother right here. He probably has a question. Let me get him.